The night shift at Blackwood Sugar Mill. The Blackwood Sugar Mill had been the lifeblood of the small, fog-shrouded town for over a century. Its towering smokestacks exhaled ghostly plumes into the sky, and its rhythmic hum seemed to beat like a second heart beneath the town's surface. Yet beneath its veneer of industry and prosperity, whispers of a sinister undercurrent had persisted for decades. Fires, accidents, disappearances. Locals called it coincidence, but those who worked the night shifts muttered prayers before stepping through its iron gates. Ramesh had heard the stories, of course, but desperation trumped superstition. He needed the paycheck. The night he stepped into the gravel path leading to the mill, the sky was heavy with an unnatural stillness, and the scent of burnt sugar lingered in the cold air. As the gates clanged shut behind him, Ramesh could have sworn he heard a faint, mournful sigh. He shook it off and walked toward the control room, his footsteps crunching loudly in the oppressive silence. Mr. Sharma, the mill's night manager, sat hunched over a console when Ramesh arrived. The older man's face was pale and drawn, his eyes bloodshot as though he hadn't slept in days. He barely looked up as he handed Ramesh the tools of the job, a heavy flashlight, a logbook, and a battered walkie-talkie. "Stick to your rounds. Check the boilers, the press floor, and the storage silos," Sharma said curtly. "And whatever you do," he paused, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "stay away from the old warehouse. Understood?" Ramesh frowned. "Why? What's wrong with the warehouse?" Sharma's lips tightened. "It's unstable, dangerous. No one has any business being there." Before Ramesh could press further, Sharma turned back to his console, the conversation clearly over. Ramesh's first few hours were uneventful. The machinery groaned and hissed, the grinding of sugarcane creating a steady rhythm that soon became background noise. He walked the vast factory floor, his flashlight casting long, distorted shadows against the ancient machinery. Yet, as he moved through the mill, unease crept over him. The air felt thicker here, heavy with an inexplicable tension. He caught fleeting movements out of the corner of his eye, shadows that shouldn't have been there. Once, as he passed by the empty break room, he thought he heard faint laughter, brittle and wrong, as though it was coming from a great distance. Shrugging it off as nerves, he continued his rounds. As the clock struck midnight, Ramesh found himself near the old warehouse. The building loomed like a forgotten sentinel, its rusted metal walls streaked with grime. Its door hung slightly ajar, creaking softly as though beckoning him. He hesitated, remembering Sharma's warning. Suddenly, the walkie-talkie on his hip crackled to life. A voice, barely audible and distorted by static, whispered his name. "Ramesh." He froze, his blood running cold. "Mr. Sharma? Is that you?" No response. The static died, leaving only the faint hum of the machines behind him. The mill felt darker now, the air heavier. Against his better judgment, he stepped closer to the warehouse door. Inside, the warehouse was a cavern of decay and shadows. The air was thick with the smell of mold and something sweet but cloying, like rotting sugar. Rusted machinery loomed in the darkness, their forms grotesque and unfamiliar in the flickering beam of Ramesh's flashlight. As he ventured deeper, he noticed a set of footprints in the thick layer of dust on the floor. They weren't his. The tracks led toward the back of the warehouse, where an old cane press stood like a forgotten relic of the mill's past. A low hum filled the air, almost imperceptible, but growing louder with every step he took. His flashlight flickered, and for a moment he thought he saw movement, a figure darting between the rusted machines. "Who's there?" he called, his voice trembling. The hum stopped abruptly, replaced by a soft, almost inaudible whisper. "Turn back." On a workbench near the cane press, Ramesh found an old leather-bound journal. Its cover was cracked and brittle, and the pages inside were yellowed with age. Flipping it open, he saw it belonged to a worker named Satpal, who had worked at the mill in the late 1970s. The early entries were mundane, detailing long shifts and complaints about the foreman. But as he read on, the entries grew darker. "Something is wrong here. The machines whisper at night. I hear my name when no one is around. And then there's her, the woman in white. She watches us from the shadows, her eyes hollow and unblinking. The others say it's just stress, but I know better. The final entry was written in a hurried, jagged scrawl. She feeds on fear, the fire. It wasn't an accident. She wanted them to burn. If you find this, don't stay. Leave before she finds you too. A sudden noise jolted Ramesh. The door to the warehouse slammed shut, and the room was plunged into darkness. His flashlight flickered, then died, leaving him in suffocating blackness. From the far corner of the room, a figure emerged. The beam of moonlight streaming through a broken window illuminated her. Long, tangled hair, a tattered white dress, and eyes that were black, empty voids. Her movements were jerky, unnatural, as though she were being controlled by unseen strings. She raised a hand, skeletal and bloodstained, and pointed directly at Ramesh. "Leave," she hissed, her voice reverberating like shattered glass. Ramesh stumbled backward, his heart pounding. The whispers returned, rising to a deafening crescendo. Shadows swirled around him, pressing closer, suffocating him. Blind with panic, Ramesh ran. He crashed into rusted machinery, stumbled over debris, but he didn't stop. The whispers grew louder, the shadows more aggressive, clawing at his sanity. When he finally reached the door, it flew open as though pushed by unseen hands. Ramesh stumbled out into the night, collapsing onto the gravel. Mr. Sharma was waiting, his face pale and drawn. "You went inside, didn't you?" he asked grimly. Ramesh could only nod, too shaken to speak. Sharma sighed, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. The fire, the deaths, the whispers, it's all connected. The mill is cursed, but the town needs it. So we stay quiet. Ramesh quit the job the next morning, leaving Blackwood and its haunted mill behind. But the nightmares followed him. Every night he dreamed of the woman in white, her hollow eyes staring into his soul. The Blackwood sugar mill continued its operations, its machines grinding away as though nothing had happened. But for those who worked the night shift, the whispers were a constant reminder. Some places are never truly at rest.